Ooh, it's recording.
I'm going to show you how to make some lemon lavender cookies now. And these are wonderful tasting cookies, and what I did was I took the regular recipe and I tweaked it and just changed some of the ingredients. So they still came out good tasting, but they're not inflammatory to the body, and they have ingredients that aren't addictive. And so that if you do have some food sensitivities, you can eat these cookies and feel okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we need a stick of butter. So to replace the butter, I have bought the Earth Balance vegan buttery sticks. Okay. So this is just an imitation, not an imitation, but a replacement for the butter. And it works out good in these cookies because you need something that's a little more solid. So I'm putting one of these sticks in here in the food processor. Oh. The next thing we need is a half a cup of sweetener. Now, usually you would use sugar, but because I do not use sugar in any of my cooking, I'm all about keeping the blood sugar stable, because when you keep the blood sugar stable, you can help keep your weight stable, along with other things. So I'm going to use a healthy sweetener that I use called Lakanto. And a lot of people may not have heard of Lakanto. Lakanto is something you can't usually buy in the store. I usually keep it on hand. I buy it by the case for my clients. Or you can get it on my website, on my store page. But anyway, it's made from a Chinese fruit called Lavendar and fermented erythritol. So it has 0 calories and it's 0 glycemic, so it won't shoot your blood sugar up. Makes you feel good, and it's 1-to-1 ratio for sugar. Now, if a recipe calls for like a cup or a cup and a half of sugar, you don't want to use a cup or cup and a half of this, because it would be a little too overpowering, but this is only calling for a half a cup. Sometimes I use the raw agave nectar also. In moderation. As long as you're not using too much of that, or any sweetener really, it's okay. So I'm going to use a half a cup of this, and this is going to give it some sweetness but not too much. Go ahead and pour that in. Takes too long with a spoon. Okay, so half a cup. All right. The next thing we need is 1 egg yolk. Let me get an egg out of here. And you want to use organic eggs if you can, or if you know somebody that raises chickens, the farm-raised chickens, those are good. Okay, let's do this.
So I have to use egg substitute?
Right.
So do I do the same that I would for a whole egg, since it's just the yolk?
I would think so. I've not done that before, but you can try it.
Okay.
And I think that may work.
And you're not putting the yolk in?
I'm going to put the yolk into the recipe.
Oh, but not the whites.
No, I'm trying to get that off of here.
Now, why don't you use the whites?
I don't know. The recipe calls for yolk.
Just checking. I thought maybe you had a secret.
No.
Secret about that.
No, just following the recipe.
Okay.
Okay, then 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Now, I just happen to be lucky and have some Mexican vanilla. Has anyone had vanilla from Mexico?
Yes.
I've had fresh where you cut open the pod.
The what kind?
You cut open the pod and you scrape it
Oh,
off.
yes.
Oh
yes.
my God. You never use regular vanilla ever again.
Oh, I
After
know.
you do that.
I know. I just haven't gotten into that yet, but I'll pass this around and let you smell it. The difference between this vanilla and the vanilla you buy in the store sometimes is that the first ingredient is vanilla, not alcohol. And it's very pure, and it smells really, really good. So I'm going to let you smell it here in a minute. Okay. There we go. Pass that around. 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. Okay, so we'll put
Oh my
that
word.
in.
You can smell it without even putting your nose to it. This is really nice.
Isn't it strong?
That's great.
Isn't it wonderful? So if you go to Mexico, if you go to Cozumel or somewhere, or if you know somebody who's going on a cruise and stopping in Mexico, I bought that in
my word,
Cozumel.
is that nice.
Yes, it really makes a difference. And so I stock up when I go to Mexico. Now they sell vanilla everywhere
I
in
gotta
Mexico,
make
so
sure
make sure you're getting organic vanilla.
Natural gourmet.
And that particular brand is really a good brand. So, but they will sell all different types, and you have to really beware and look at the ingredients. and know what you're buying.
Extracto de vanilla. Pero
Doesn't it smell good?
alcohol y
Yes.
See
vanilla.
them out the window and dash yourself.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
really
for
nice.
sure, for sure. So then I'm going to go ahead and blend this. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to put in there is the lavender, 1.5 teaspoons. Now what you want to do is get a mortar and pestle if you have one. If you don't, just crush it with something hard. And it calls for 1.5 teaspoons. Let's wipe this off here. So I'm going to get 1. Yeah. All right. So you just really want to crush it a little bit just to release some of the oils in the lavender. Love the smell of lavender. Has anyone had lavender tea?
Mm-mm.
Oh,
Lavender
it's
and green tea. is
yeah,
really
so
nice.
relaxing. Okay, and we'll add this to it. Alrighty. Now my flour blend, and I have a recipe for the flour blend for you guys. And instead of using white flour, because as we know, white flour is inflammatory to the body and there's no fiber and it's really not good for you. And the gluten in there is inflammatory to the body also. A lot of people have gluten sensitivity and they're not aware of it. And it's not celiac disease, but it's gluten sensitivity. And it's also an addictive thing too. So what I do is a blend, because you can't always replace just one type of flour for another. So I use a little bit of 4 different types of flour. So if you don't have all of these flours, you can always pick one up at a time and eventually accumulate them and keep them in your refrigerator, and they last a really long time. So I've had these flours for up to a year in my refrigerator. And once I've accumulated them, then I have what I need. So I'm going to use 1/4 cup of potato starch. Right here. Okay. Right in there. And then we need 1/4 cup of the tapioca flour. Now make sure it's the potato starch and not the potato flour. It makes a difference. Okay, so we want the tapioca next. Got lots of flour going on here. The next one is my favorite, 1/4 cup of almond meal flour. I love almond meal flour. Technically, it's not even really flour, it's just really ground up almonds, but it gives things a really good flavor. Out of all the alternate flours, it is a little more expensive, but you don't use a lot of it, and you don't use it in everything. So, but what you do use it in tastes really good. I have a recipe in my book for cookies called Coconut Walnut Delights that are so good, and they use almond meal flour. Okay, so now brown rice flour is the last one, and at least you're getting some fiber from the brown rice flour and the almond flour. Okay. All right, now we want to blend it. Find a surface, put some flour on it. Now you could either use the brown rice flour or another flour, any flour that you have really. And this is where you get to play with it with your hands. All right, take this out. What you want to do is scoop out the batter and just kind of put it here on the flour. Here it's a little bit sticky. Okay. So what you want to do is kind of get it in the flour here. Just kind of roll it around a little bit so it's not quite so sticky. And then, as you're doing that, you want to shape it into like a log. Doesn't take very long to do. Just kind of roll it while you're doing that into about 1.5 inch thick log. Okay, now usually what I do once I get to this point is, and I'm going to grab a knife here and cut it in half. Just kind of leave it here and here. And just really roll it up and put it in the refrigerator for an hour. And after an hour, let's say we've already refrigerated it by magic, take it out. Okay. And then what you want to do is slice it. Slice it in half. And you can, if you are rolling it on a cutting board and then putting it on the foil, you don't have to leave it in the flour. I just did that for demonstration purposes. And then you want to cut it into pieces like this and put it on a parchment-lined baking sheet, like that. It makes about, this last batch I made about 28 cookies, so anywhere between 24 and 28 cookies. So slice it like that, about like that, and then you want to bake it at 350 for 15 minutes. And that's it. And then you have these lovely cookies. Lemon lavender cookies.
There we go.